What's going on? Alright, so basically today what I wanted to do was go through and show you all how to go through and create a simple graphical application using Python and its GTK bindings. Okay, this is obviously going to be for Linux, but I think GTK is available for Windows and Mac OS as well. You may have to go through and install some additional of those software besides Python. Alright, so we're obviously going to go through and create a graphical application, but we don't want to go through and do it manually throughout our program actual. So what we want to do is actually go through and create a graphical application using effectively another graphical application to write then a template file that will then be referenced to then actually create the proper application, or at least the graphical side of our application, right? So to do that, all we got to do is go through, and I scrolled over to the wrong window. To do that, all we have to go through and do is open up Glade. This is a wonderful program that you can install from the Linux application store. And so using Glade, we can go through and create the template or outline of our application or graphics, outline of our graphical side of our application, and import it and use it accordingly. So we're going to go through and create a new project near the top left, and as you'll see, it's split into 3 windows, with the first window actually being a tree view / drop-down list of the widgets that you have selected, with the middle being the graphical representation of our GUI, and then the on the right is the settings of each individual widget or component of our graphical part of our application or GUI. All right, so as you'll see in the window, middle window, we do have several buttons, and on the right side there are groupings. So top levels, containers, control, and display. They're pretty self-explanatory, I would argue, with top levels obviously creating structures or templates for us to use and then expand upon. And in this instance, it's worth talking at least about the first 3 in the list, which is GTK window, off-screen window, and application window. Okay, so they're all pretty much similar in this instance, with obviously differences and or nuances, so it's worth keeping in mind. So for instance, with the application window has a menu bar, whereas the GTK window does not. And the off-screen window, I'm not particularly actually certain what the off-screen window has, but there are obviously nuances to it, right? Anyway, so in this instance, we're going to go through and use the GTK window, and when we do that, it's going to go through and of course do just this. We have the visual aspect of it in the center. The window now is listed on the left, which is the parent or root of our components. And then on the right, we have settings and parameters that we can set for the window itself, or this particular object. Okay, the things that we're going to focus on the right are the ID, the title, maybe the icon file, and the default width and default height. So we're going to go ahead and set up the ID. So the reason why we set up the ID, oh my goodness, MAIN. Okay, the reason why we set up the ID for the root window, or the root part of this application, is because we need to reference it to then draw the application actual. Okay. And so in our code, we actually have to go through and use this ID to reference the window component and then do other stuff afterwards, okay? The next thing we're going to look at is window attributes. And really the ones that we're going to focus on is position and gravity. And really what we're going to do is I'm going to set them to center, because this will center align the application whenever it starts up, okay? And that's just kind of useful to be aware of. The other 2 types and hints we can look at later, but not for this particular tutorial. The other thing that's worth mentioning is going to be title, and for me, I'm going to do hello world, and I'm going to call this app, because hello world app is going to be, our application, okay? And then we can look at the icon name or icon file. And then what that is the icon of the application. So if you look at the panel here, we have icons for each of these little applications, right? So that's how you set the icon for your application. And in this instance, I'm going to use the icon name and click the little kind of wand there and select an icon for us to use. And I think this one right here is fine. All right. Now, it is worth talking about or the window sizing and how window sizing is handled. So in this instance, or most instances anyway, is that the root window will size itself according to the contents of its children and how they are sized. And so in this instance, though, because we're going to be using a button, the button itself is pretty tiny, which will make our window pretty tiny. So what we want to do is actually give it a default width and height. And so all we have to do in this instance, I'm going to go ahead and just check mark both of these, and we're going to just use the default settings that are provided. Okay, and now we have, of course, the base window set up. I'm going to go ahead and Control S to save it and set it into a particular directory. And I'm going to give it the title of main, and the I'm going to give it the file name is going to be called main, and the extension will be applied when I save it. All right. So we now have a very kind of simple, quick, and dirty window, but obviously this is not really impressive because we don't have anything going on really. So let's go ahead and add a button. And obviously buttons seem like they control the application or do control functionality. So obviously the button will lie under the grouping of control. And in fact, it's going to be the very first option in the list. When we click on it, oh, that's not what I wanted. When we click on it, we'll see which one is selected near, on the top, like left over here. And then what we do is you'll see that this kind of like little window has kind of like this gray area. And what that means is that things can be dropped into that to then be set, or, to be set in it, or to be positioned into it, or whatever. So for this window, we're going to set only a button. So when we click on that, it's going to drop the button into that little kind of spacing that we saw. And voila. Now, you'll see that the button is a child component of the window. On the left here, it's a list, and of course it's a tree list type of thing. So I can click between them, and of course you'll see on the right the parameters and options that you can set for the widget or component change. So that's worth noting and keeping aware of, because if you're editing something and you lose track of what you've clicked on, you may be wondering, like, oh no, why am I not seeing what setting I'm supposed to be seeing? That may be why. It's because you have something selected incorrectly, or you have the incorrect thing selected. So I'm going to go ahead and click on button. And in this instance, we're not really going to do anything with the button beyond the general tab or the signal tab right now. Okay. So I'm going to go through and quickly look at the general tab here. We're not going to give it an ID for the button because we're not, well, actually, let's do so actually. We're going to give it the ID BUTTON. The button's ID is going to be button, okay? And then the reason why I'm going to do that is because I'm going to show you all about connecting signals, and that's going to be kind of the quasi-critical part of this whole point of the application, is because you have to use signals to go through and do things, right? Anyway, so we have the ID of button, and I'm also going to just go through and change the label. And we're not going to look at anything else. Don't focus on anything else. Just look at the label, and that's set right here where I've highlighted, okay? And I'm going to go through and call that click me exclamation mark, click me, okay? And so we're pretty much good to go. Yeah, we're pretty much good to go for the template file. If I go ahead and minimize this and I open up my text application, I'm gonna go also ahead and open up my file manager, and you'll see that of course I've got my preset up for where I look at my file, and you'll see that I have my main.glade. I'm gonna go ahead and open that up to show you that it's quite literally just a simple XML file, more or less, right? And from there, it's read by the builder that builds the window and uses those settings and parts to basically set up the window for you, okay? So you can edit this file manually if you want. I have had to do so sometimes when the graphical side of the application, for whatever reason, spazzes out and I have to fix it. I have to sometimes come in manually and edit things. I wouldn't recommend it. Or if you don't have to, I don't recommend it, because it can get ugly, and it's not easy to do, because some things are just kind of really clumped weirdly, and it makes it harder to kind of track what is and isn't a child component and all that. So anyway, I'm just saying you can do so, but I don't really recommend it. All right, we're ready to go through and create our actual Python file that will go through and use this main.glade file to create our application window. So I'm going to go ahead and create my file here, and I'm going to just call it main.py. Okay, and then of course I'm going to go ahead and open that up, and we're going to go through and set up a very basic class, CLASS, and I'm going to call it main : and then we're going to do def, and we're going to do underscore init, underscore underscore, and we're going to change out arg to be self. And then from here, I'm going to do if, and we're going to change this to be main equals main, in parentheses. And this is our very kind of basic little kind of class. Now that we have the basic class, what we're going to do is, of course, get the appropriate module for Python to use the proper GTK module and all that. Okay. To do so, we're going to do import GUI. Okay. And then from there, we're going to actually have to go through and manually specify which version of GTK we want to use. And I want to use GTK 3 or up. So we're going to go through and do GI dot QUI underscore require. I'm going to have to look at my notes, to be honest, because I don't really remember it. Require version, that's it. Require underscore version, parentheses, and then we're going to give it 2 arguments, GTK for the first, and then of course the other one is going to be the version, so 3.0. Okay, and then from there we're going to do GI dot repository import, and then we're going to do GTK. And for me, I'm going to also specify it as lowercase GTK rather than capitalized GTK. And that's just for me because I prefer to simplify my typing and all that. Now that we've done that, we can go through and go back to this if section here, and then we're going to do GTK.main and parentheses. And that's going to go through and allow us to go through and actually, do what we need for what we need. Whatever that means. It's going to go through and start up our application graphically side, I believe. Anyway, okay, cool. Now that we've got that set, let's go ahead and create a string. Glade file equals, and then we're going to do main.glade, okay, because that's obviously our Glade file title. And so now we're ready to go through and actually kind of help create our window. So basically what we need is, remember that this is a template, right? And we need something that builds this template out into our actual window, right? So funny enough, it's quite literally just called builder, right? And so what we're going to do is going to be self.builder equals gtk.builder. Okay, and I'm going to go through and space this a little bit better here. All right, and so now we have a reference to the builder object of Glade, and from there we're going to say add from file. We want to add a file into the builder to go through it and build that file out effectively, right? So we'll do self.builder equals, or excuse me, not equals, but dot add underscore from underscore file, and then of course we're going to just give it the string that we had here for Glade file. We don't have to necessarily specify a string, but if the pathing is long, then it's worthwhile to just, put it into its own string and go from there. Okay, so now we have the builder set up, and we have the file being referenced properly. Now we can go through and actually reference the individual objects of our window, right? And we have 2 objects in this instance. We have the window object and we have the button object, okay? And so we each gave those objects actual IDs, okay? So first things first, we're going to want to get the window actually showing properly, okay? Or rather, actually, let's go ahead and build a button first. So we're going to do button, button, equals, and I'm going to quite literally just copy paste this here so I don't have to type it out. Button get, and again we're going to be going through and getting the object, so that's what we're going to be calling it, get object. And then we give it the ID of the button. And if y'all will recall, the ID of the button is actually button. So just to show that again, I'm going to go ahead and go to my window, click on the button, and you'll see a button is right here. We can copy that, and obviously then from there, set that into the parameter, or pass it to the get object, which will then give us the object of the button, okay? And so now what we can do is go through and actually attach a signal to that button. And the reason why we want to do that is obviously because we want to do something. You know, the button's not just, the button's not going to be there for just prettiness. It's got to have some functionality, right? So we need to connect a signal to that button to do something, okay? So all we have to do is use button, or if I could just type button, and dot connect, okay? And then for the connect, we have to give it 2 arguments. The type of connection that we're going to make, as well as the function to call when we make that connection, or is it that signal, right? So it's useful to use the Glade application to actually reference what available signals there are for the object. So if I click on the button, and I then click on the signal section here, I can see all the signal types, and there are a lot of them. And I'm not gonna go. You'll see we're gonna have these, but then we have this, which is long, and we have then of course this. We're not gonna look at any of these. The only one we're gonna look at is clicked, and so you'll see the signal name is called clicked, and so we're gonna reference that, and we're gonna pass that out. So we're gonna say CLICKED. Okay, and then we got to give it a function. Okay, so quickly let's go ahead and actually make a function that we can use to reference. So I'm going to do def, and in this instance we're going to do print txt. Okay, now the function itself needs to have 2 arguments passed, has 2 arguments passed to it, or 2 parameters passed to it. The first one is just self. Which is the class itself, and it's kind of adding itself to the class collection, effectively, kind of, somewhat. The second one is widget. I'm going to call it widget. That's what I'm going to call it. And what that one is that is the actual thing that's calling the function. So in this instance, the widget, when print text is called, will be button. Okay? So now that we have that set up, I'm actually going to go through and do print, and then of course parentheses, and we're going to say hello world. Okay. Then we of course need to go through and set that up for our connection, and so we'll do self dot print text. Okay. And voila, we now have the button. We have a click event that's connected to the button, and we're calling the print text function. And when we run that, we are going through and, we're just calling that function, okay? So let's go ahead and just see what happens when we actually try to run this. And obviously, if anyone hears this, they're probably going to be immediately suspicious that obviously something's not going to work right. So, and they would of course be correct. So if I were to run this right now, you will see that, we gotta change that out. We need to do from GUI repository, and clear that out, and voila. Okay, so mind not these warnings. These warnings are actually part of my system, so don't worry about that. I don't have a particular theming engine that this system wants. Anyway, but you'll see though that there's no window. And I can't do anything. I can't even control C to quit this. Okay, I can only close the actual shell application to kill the application. So what's happening? Well, the thing is that we need to actually show the things that we want. We need to actually come on, please work for me. We need to go through and actually show the actual window. Okay, and so. To do that, we obviously now need to have a reference to the window. And in fact, I'm going to literally copy this. I'm going to go through and just change out some of the settings here. So I'm going to call this window. And I'm going to use that. Control C, Control C, Control V. And now, of course, we need to go through and reference the window object, or the ID. And for me, that is main. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. And I'm also going to go through and connect a signal to this called delete event. DLETE-EVENT. The delete event is the actual event for the close button on the Windows border, where you can minimize and expand and close. That close button, you actually have to manually set up the signal for. It will not work otherwise. So you have to manually set up the signal each and every time. And then the function that you call is gtk.main underscore QUIT. Okay? And this will allow you to close the window properly. Now, again, like I said, we have to show the window. So to do so, what we do is do window, right? And then just simply do show. And this will go through and effectively draw and show our window. And so when I go ahead and run this, we now see that our application is running, and we can click on the button, and we have the signals connected. All right. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and run that quickly. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Anyway. So, yeah, and as you'll see, we can close the window properly, too. Okay? Okay, well, what if we don't want to connect the button signals manually? What if we want to just kind of specify that through the signals section in Glade? You can do so, okay? So to do that, I'm going to comment the button stuff out. I'm going to go back, click on button. I'm going to go to the signal section, and I'm going to go back to the clicked section. And from there, I'm going to go through and click on that, which is the handler. The handler is just the function name, okay? And Control S to save it, okay? From there, what we need to do, though, is now connect the signals from this class to the builder object, okay? So to do that, all you do is do self.builder with some new line spacing here, and you're going to do connect, and you almost think connect is just that. That's all you need to do. Nope, you're going to do connect underscore signals, signals, okay? And then you pass self to the connect signals method for builder, okay? And so from there, now you can go through and connect whatever signals, and you will get now the button click event here. And you can, you are calling hello world, and your application closes and all that. And obviously we can go ahead and clear that up to make it a little bit prettier, and voila. That is how you can go through and create a very quick and simple Python application. The next tutorial will cover input fields and whatever else I feel will be useful for that next tutorial. There are going to be several, just because I want to have some tips and tricks tutorials as well to make it a little bit easier, as well as to have a reference for myself. So thank you very much for watching. Please rate, subscribe, tell me what you think, and talk to you all later.